Namaste, I'm Dr. Akruthi Shridhar, Assistant Professor, Department of Kaumarabhritya, Yenepoya Ayurveda Medical College, Naringana. Nutrition is one of the important factor in growth and development of children, and today I'll be speaking regarding one of the important aspect of nutrition, that is weaning, which is essential for every parent and every caregiver to know so that the growth and development of the child remains adequate. So in today's talk, I'll be dealing with what is weaning, when and why to wean your infant, how to wean, the challenges faced by the parents, impacts of improper weaning, and lastly, what is necessary for every caregiver to keep in mind when the weaning process happens. So what is weaning? Weaning has two aspects to it. The meaning of weaning means to detach from that to which one is strongly habituated to or devoted to, and the other aspect is to get accustomed to something that the child is going to practice for a longer time. So when it comes to pediatrics, weaning is defined as the process of progressive transfer of the baby from the diet that is which the child is habituated to, that is the breast milk, to the usual family or the adult diet. So here the baby is getting detached from the breast milk and slowly getting attached to the adult diet. Then why and when to wean? That is a very necessary important question one has to answer. Why should a child wean? So breast milk or the formula milk, which is considered as the first food of the child, which is the best food for the infant, is giving all the nutrients for the growth and development. But as the child grows, this is not sufficient for, or it lacks the nutritional requirements necessary for the child's growth, and it also lacks the energy requirements necessary for the child's growth. To fulfill that, one has to wean their child. So this is generally started at the time of 6 months of the age of the child, and then it continues until 2 years of the age. In 6 to 12 months, generally the child is getting accustomed to the adult diet slowly and gradually, and the next 1 year is where the child is getting detached from the breast milk. So how do we understand that the child is ready for weaning? How do we know that the child is ready for weaning? So these are the few factors. First thing is the child has attained neck holding. That also the child is able to sit upright without any support, and there is eye-hand coordination, which is essential to bring the food to the mouth, and child is able to swallow the food, and child has interest in what others are eating. So these are the few factors that decide if the child is ready for weaning. So once the child is ready, one has to know how to wean the child. So how do we do it? Lastly, there are 3 kinds of techniques or the practices that are being followed. First one is a classical method of weaning, or is a traditional method of weaning, where the child is first given with spoon feedings, slowly gets adapted to mash foods, semi-solid mashed foods, and later the finger foods, later the complete adult diet. So this is the primary or the traditional method that is generally practiced. This is quite easy for the caregiver, because the caregiver has more control over what the parent or the caregiver is providing, and it is less messier. The next one is baby-led weaning. So baby-led weaning is where the child is encouraged to feed itself or feed themselves. So here the chunks of food are provided, which can be squeezed with thumb and index fingers, which are where the variety of colorful foods are provided. So child has choice what the child can eat. So child is encouraged to feed itself, and this is a method where the child is more adventurous and get accustomed to the family foods quite early. And also it is where the hand grasp movement or the pinza grasp is easily seen, and those milestones are attained easily. Also there is a lot more involvement during the family meal time. The third variety is a mix of both. That is, the child is also spoon fed, also the finger feeds are provided. So in generally, the baby led feeding is where the child is exposed to different textures of food quite early in their life, and also in the mixed variety, the solid foods as well as the liquid foods are provided. So when it comes to spoon feeding, one has to make sure that the consistency of the food is right. It should not be too thin because the child has to swallow it, and if it is, it should not be drinkable where the child should put in efforts to start chewing the food. These are the few textures of the baby foods that you will be noticing, and that is something that the child learns quite early during the baby led feeding. Now, how do we start weaning? So generally it is started with mono cereals followed by multi cereals and then the pulses. Especially rice is considered as the easiest way to start it, and the hygiene should be maintained. The rice should be washed properly, followed by it should be fried, and then it should be steamed so that it becomes quite lighter for digestion. So once it is started with the thick, in the form of thick porridge, and it is also provided with well mashed foods, and which is the frequency of the food is somewhere around 2 to 3 times per day, and each meal is about 2 to 3 tablespoons of the feed. So this is how it is started, followed by 9 to 11 months where the finely chopped and the mashed foods are provided, and slowly, gradually the frequency of the food is also increased. So by 12 to 23 months, the baby is slowly weaned from the breast milk, and slowly the amount of food, that is the family foods, are increased on daily basis. So this is on a grosser level how one can wean the child. We can also add in ghee, jaggery and butter to increase the nutrient value of the diet. Now lot variety of foods can be provided, as in vegetables, the cereals, pulses, fruits and dairy products to be involved so that it fulfills all the requirements of the child. So now that we have grossly understood how weaning has to be done and how the gradual transition has to be, there are other practices that are seen around which is considered as improper weaning techniques. So after understanding there are improper weaning techniques that is followed around, there are few other challenges the parent faces during weaning. These are the few questions generally the parents have. My child doesn't have teeth and is unable to chew the food and is in the state of weaning. In such cases, one should start with spoon feedings, which is adequate enough to fulfill the nutrients that the child needs during this phase. The other question is not familiar with the food taste. There is something called as the concept called as flavor bridge, that is what the mother likes is also passed on to the child. The another concept that the Ayurvedic practitioners believe is that the food the mother is accustomed to throughout her childhood and during the pregnancy that she follows is something which the child is also conducive to. So generally it should not happen, and if when it happens, one has to provide with the new food very slowly and gradually, and then once the child is taking, then one has to continue feeding. If the child is unable to take, then you need to come back to the food that the child generally takes and slowly start it sometime later when the child is ready. And it is very essential to understand if the appetite of the child is good enough to take in the new diet. Now another question is, the child is not taking this food and is spitting out. This is considered as tongue thrust, which is a reflex which diminishes by 6 months. So it is very important for one to start during, it is told that it should be started 6 months after completion of 6 months, so that this diminishment of this reflex is seen and child is able to swallow the food. The another thing is the food, if the food is too thin, child swallows it as a liquid. If it is too thick, the child is unable to swallow it and is unable to chew the food. That is when one has to understand the consistency of the food which is essential when it comes to weaning. Now, the other factor that is generally the challenge for a parent is the social norms. One has to remember that your child, the weaning process that is done to your child is something which is tailor-made. So, you cannot think that all the child need same amount of food at same time. So, one has to understand the clues that the child provides so that weaning happens easily. So, once we have dealt with few of the challenges that we already saw as a parent we also need to remember few of the points when weaning the child. First thing is, timely initiation is necessary to provide the child with necessary nutrients for the growth and development of the child. Second thing is the gradual transition that is necessary during the weaning process. Weaning should be done gradually so that it doesn't hamper the microbiome or the bacteria that is present in the gut, which will lead to other conditions. Now, the next factor is the frequency. Now, the frequency is dependent and the gradual transition is also dependent on the appetite of the child. And as we know, the appetite being unstable, one has to understand the clues that the child provides. So, the natural weaning would happen based on the clues that the child is providing. So, weaning on demand is necessary. When the demand is more, when the appetite is good, the child would demand for more food and the frequency of the food or the feeding should be increased. And that is when the gradual transition will also happen. The next factor is giving wholesome and culturally accepted foods. Wholesome foods and culturally accepted foods would provide necessary nutrients for the child for the growth and development of it. And at this phase, one has to remember the quality of the food provided would create a diverse microbiome in the child that would help in metabolism of that is essential. So, this phase during the weaning process, if one is able to maintain this, the child will not be predisposed to any kind of allergies or any other issues of immune system. And that is why no processed food should be provided to the child during this process so that the child gets the optimum nutritional level. Lastly, the environment factor also plays a larger role in providing optimum nutrition. So, the environment, one has to make sure that it is the environment is clean, hygiene and it is pleasant so that the child enjoys feeding and is concentrating towards the food and is enjoying the process of feeding. So, any barriers in the form of screen-based media should not get involved during the feeding time so that the optimal nutrition is provided to the child. So, these few factors, once the parents and the caregivers have to remember these factors so that they provide and help the child during the weaning process. Thank you. These are my references. Thank you.